All right, welcome back. So now we're gonna move along. Now we're gonna discuss. We're gonna discuss a principle that's very important in the relationship between your intention and quantization. This is really important because it's also going to play a role in metaphysics when we talk about how the metaphysical reality works in the book 2. So this is very important. And basically, I call it the principle itself is called the absolute nature of intent or intention. Terrible name, but that's what just kept coming to my mind. So for this principle, we basically start with a question, right? So we're going to start with a question that kind of piggybacks off what we spoke about the last video. So let's take the emotion of ambition, right? So even before asking the question, let's think of how you feel, right? When you feel ambitious or very determined to achieve something or accomplish something, right? So that's a feeling, that's an emotion, right? So presumably, according to this theory, because if it's emotion, it would mean your subconscious is on a very specific frequency. It can't produce that emotion on any other frequency. So for the moment, we'll just call it the ambition frequency, right? So if you want to feel ambitious, right? If you want to feel like you really want to accomplish something and you're going to achieve something, no matter what, you're not going to let anything stop you, you're going to achieve it, right? That's a feeling of ambition. What type of intention do you believe you would need to produce to have that feeling? Well, generally, you can imagine or think back to times in your life or now, if you can think of what you were thinking during the times in your life where you were very, very, very ambitious, right? You probably had some reason you wanted to accomplish something. You kept thinking about what that reason was. You held it in your mind, and then you felt a large amount of determination. You're like, I'm going to achieve this, I'm going to achieve this, I'm going to achieve this, right? And then you felt that feeling, that emotion of ambition, right? Now, when you keep saying you're going to accomplish this, right? That's an intention. So, like I said, intention has two parts. So it has the subject and it has the command or the assertion. The subject is some plan or something like that, right? In that case. Or it's implicitly is generally you also. So when you say, I'm going to accomplish this, implicitly the subject is you, but just ignoring that because that's almost part of every one of your intentions. The subject itself, and it makes more sense when we talk about how subconscious memory works. In this case, the subject itself is just the plan to achieve your goal, right? But the assertion, right, the command is actually the assertion that you will accomplish this goal, right? So that's the command part of the intention, right? And that's really, I was going to say something. We'll talk more about that in the next section, right? Probably, I think in the next video. But specifically, those are the intentions you're producing that primarily that I will achieve this, right? In that, if you really think about it, that's what's causing you to feel the ambition frequency or the ambition emotion, right? But then why? Why does that expression of intention cause you to feel ambition, right? And that gives to this next question. Who decided which intention should be paired with certain emotions and frequencies, right? So in other words, why does the intention to achieve something make me feel ambitious? Why not make me feel sad or make me feel happy or make me feel gratitude or inner peace or hatred or whatever? Why does saying I will accomplish this make me feel ambition? We can also ask, let's take another emotion. Let's say you want to feel the emotion of peace or inner peace. Generally, to feel that, you would relax, you'd calm down, and you would focus on yourself, and you might say something to yourself like, I am relaxed, I am calm, I feel peace, or something like that, right? Now, your intention, the command part of your intention, and the subject part's not super important right now, but the command part is really what I want to look at. The command part of the intention is expressing a command that says to relax, or slow down, or you're calm, right? That helps you to charge the peace frequency. So you feel the emotion of peace and your body responds to that compulsion. Because remember we said the subconscious compels the mind and the body. So the body responds to that compulsion by relaxing. And it can also read the frequency of the subconscious. And so in that case, those specific thoughts or intentions cause the peace frequency to charge. But what if I wanted to change it, right? What if I wanted to what if I wanted to say, produce the intention that says, I will win, I will achieve this goal, but then feel laughter? Why doesn't doing that make me bust out laughing? You know what I mean? Why doesn't doing that make me feel angry? You know, why, what if I wanted to make it so that if I hold the intention which says, you know, I'm gonna win the lottery, or I've won the lottery, is it possible for me to express that intention and feel super sad for some reason, right? In other words, the answer is no. But if you think about it, right, why can't I manipulate my own thoughts in certain ways that allow this intention to be paired up with this frequency of my choice, and this intention to be paired up with this frequency of my choice, right? Why can't I do that? Because if you hold the intention to just win, right, and that's all that's in your mind is you're going to achieve this goal, or you're going to accomplish this goal, you're going to win this sports game, right? If you just hold that and you hold it very intently, you're going to notice you're never going to feel any other emotion except the ambition frequency, right? You're not going to suddenly feel sad or suddenly feel happy or the feeling of peace or joy or gratitude. You're only going to feel ambition the more you just hold that intention. Now, if you hold that intention and then think other thoughts, then maybe other frequencies will be mixed with it. But if you just hold that thought, you will always feel the ambition frequency, and it won't change. But then the question is why? Who, let's again, I read this question, who decided which intentions should be paired up with certain emotions and frequencies, right? And then you get to this other question, is that, actually, no, this is a statement. So this is actually a similar question to asking, who decided which EM waves or electromagnetic waves got linked to certain colors, right? Because every color that enters your retinas, right, has a specific frequency or a specific wavelength in the electromagnetic spectrum that determines what color you actually perceive, right? So one electromagnetic frequency is always going to be red. It was red at the beginning of time, and it's going to be red to the end of time. Presuming, right, all the species see the same color. I know that is disputable. There's really no way to prove it, but let's assume, okay, fine, let me not even do that, because I guess you could open that for debate. Let's just say you specifically, since you're able to verify it, right? You will, your entire lifetime, you would have seen a specific wavelength has a specific color, right? I don't know what the numbers are, but let's say 420, what are they? I think they're measured in angstroms or something like that. But yeah, I forget what the hertz range is. I'd have to look it up. But anyway, let's say that the frequency normally associated with red, right? Anytime that frequency of electromagnetic wave hits your retina, you're always going to see red. If it's green, anytime that frequency electromagnetic wave hits your retina, that's what you're going to see. It's never going to be the case that your frequency that's normally red will suddenly be green. There's nothing you can do. You can't change it. You can't hold an intention to see green on the frequency that's normally assigned to red in the electromagnetic spectrum. You can't take any pills or do anything, right? It's always going to be the same color till the end of your life, right? And the same thing is true with your other senses, right? So certain frequencies in terms of sound waves will have a certain sound. They'll have a certain pitch, will sound a certain way. High frequencies sound like a hissing sound. Low frequencies sound like bass, right? Mid frequencies sound like just like a snare drum. See, I think in terms of beats and music, but they sound a little bit like a snare drum. Every frequency also has a unique quality to it, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's a unique quality to every sound called, I think it's timbre, which I don't think you can really characterize in terms of pitch, frequency, volume, things like that. It's just unique for whatever reason. That quality is also not, you can't change it, right? There's really nothing you can do to make a guitar sound like a piano, right? Your ears are just not going to pick up the sound that way. There's no amount of editing you can do to it. There's a unique quality about pianos that give them the sound that they have, right? There's nothing I can do to change how my brain perceives that sound. Same thing with smells and chemical structures, right? There's nothing I can do to make the chemical structure of an orange smell more like this chemical structure of a banana. I just have to take it as it is. So we ask the question again, who decided which of these unique structures got paired up with how we perceive them? And the answer is God, right? So that's my belief. So this pairing between intention and subconscious frequency is a pairing made by God and cannot be changed. So that's super, super important for everything we talk about for the rest of the book, because you have to recognize, so remember what I said, to get your subconscious to do certain things, you have to make it switch to the proper frequency. So you need to quantize it so that it's on the frequency you need it to do whatever you want it to do. If you want it to produce a certain emotion, you need it to be on the right frequency. If you want to have a certain kind of imagination, right? If you want to fantasize about certain things, you need it to be on the right frequency. If you want to be creative in certain ways, you need to be on the right frequency, right? You're not going to be creative at telling jokes, for example, on the inner peace frequency. Doesn't make sense. I could probably write peaceful poetry on that frequency, but I'm not going to be able to make funny jokes on that frequency unless I mix it with the humor frequency, which is possible. Just as it's possible with colors, just as it's possible with smells and sounds. They could be mixed. But you have to recognize that the subconscious, just like colors, sounds, and smells, and texture, right? It has an absolute nature to it, which means that your subconscious has almost like a pre-written program into it that tells it what to do when you produce a certain intention. Now, I know that from the conscious mind's perspective, when you produce an intention, it kind of seems like, even though most people aren't aware of the subconscious in the way that we're discussing it here, it kind of seems like when you produce an intention, your subconscious is primarily just listening to your command. And that's mostly true, but to really understand how to control the subconscious, it's actually a little bit broader even than that. Because if I hold the command that says, I want to feel X emotion on Y frequency, for example, if I produce some kind of command like that, it's never going to work, right? There's nothing I can do to achieve that. So that's not actually what's happening. It's not really that your subconscious is following your command. What's actually happening is the subconscious just has a preset program which tells it how to respond when you produce a particular intention, right? Before time was time, God already knew the entire range of possible intentions you were going to ever produce, or all people were ever going to produce, all sentient life forms most likely. And whenever we produce an intention, that intention, the subconscious reads it and says, oh, God told me to do this when you produce that intention, right? So learning to control your subconscious, what it really means is learning this connection, right? You need to learn what does the subconscious do when I produce this kind of intention? What does it produce when I produce that kind of intention? What frequency does it go to? And what does it do on that frequency, right? Which you always know the frequency by the emotion you feel. But this is very important. So you in order to control your subconscious, you got to think beyond just assuming that your subconscious is just obeying your command. It is doing that to an extent, but it's more than that. What it's actually doing is what God told it to do, right? It's just responding to your intention. So there may be switching to the frequency that God told it to do whenever you express a certain kind of intention. So for all you know, there could be all types of things it does when you express certain kind of intentions that you just never thought to do. You never thought to produce that intention because you didn't realize that the subconscious had a preset program, right? So who knows what God told your subconscious to do on this frequency and that frequency and that frequency. So that's a learning curve. And so that's where this comes from. So each frequency has its own learning curve. So in the last video, I was telling you guys that when I was trying to charge the love frequency, right, I had to learn what different expressions of intention got my subconscious to charge up to switch to that frequency and then charge at that. Charging is a different process. We're mostly just talking about quantization right now. But more specifically, I had to learn what got my subconscious to switch to the love frequency in its different shades. So I learned certain kind of songs, right? Certain songs stimulated me to produce an intention in a certain way. And then that intention caused my subconscious to switch to the frequency that I wanted, right? I learned that other songs didn't affect me that way. When I was listening to those songs, I found it hard to produce an intention that caused the frequency I wanted to be the one my subconscious switches to. So that's why I say it's a learning curve. And as I kept focusing on different songs and different stories in my head and different fantasies, I started to learn which stories were more strongly associated with this frequency. I started to learn which songs were more strongly associated with this frequency. And it's the same thing. Even other senses, things you smell and see, could be associated with a certain frequency. So it's very important to, every frequency is like you want to study it, right? You want to study that frequency and get an idea of what expressions of your intention, what types of things you do with your intention to cause your subconscious to switch to that frequency and charge up there. So once you know that, then you can just keep producing an intention in a certain specific way, and your subconscious will just stay at that frequency, and then that'll allow it to charge up at that frequency, and then then you'll be able to use your transcendental mental abilities in a way that matches that frequency. So that was a lot to say, but yeah, basically you get the idea, right? So the absolute nature of intention is very, very, very important. You need to, every frequency has a learning curve, and you need to know what types of intentions keep your subconscious on that particular frequency. I think that's it. Yeah, we went over it. So in the, it was kind of too early to talk about it now, but like I said before, this this principle is very important spiritually, right? We haven't gotten there yet, but well, we'll talk about it again at the end of the chapter, because this is very important when it comes to morality, right? Which I forgot. Yeah, we talk about that at the end of the chapter too. So yeah, that's it. In the next chapter, next video, we're going to go more over certain principles, because we're going to expand on this idea. And we're going to talk more about the quantization effect and how it's related to intention. The first thing to know is this principle that everything's fixed. You can't change how your subconscious responds to certain intentions. If I hold the intention to hurt someone, that's going to be a negative frequency. There's nothing I can do to change that, right? It's always going to be negative. That's how God made it, right? But we're going to look at other principles, piggybacking off this, and then we're going to go into basically how entertainment works. So how do you get entertained? Why do certain movies make you feel a certain way? Why do certain stories? And that's what I was talking about in the last video, that certain stories help me to charge this frequency. Why do stories do that? Why do some stories like action adventure make you feel a certain way? Why do certain stories like mysteries make you feel a certain way? All of that's based on this, but to explain that, we're going to have to study two other principles. So yeah, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next video.